to address the issues facing Tennesseans today. From 10 News, this is Inside Tennessee.
Good Sunday morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee along with my colleague John North. I'm John Becker, and our discussion today focuses on this question. Who writes the bills that Tennessee lawmakers vote on? Pretty simple, but the answer is complex. We want to set you up with a little baseline information. If you look at a typical legislative session, about 3,000 bills are proposed, and in any given year, about 10% or 300 of those bills actually pass. We're going to bring in our guests right now, and two men who you know well. Both represented Knoxville between them for almost 40 years. Harry Brooks is a Republican. Harry Tindell is a Democrat. They are both out of the legislature, but again, 16 and 22 years in that body between them. We are appreciative of their presence with us this morning. And Don Bosch is a Democrat. He also runs his own law firm. Susan Richardson Williams is a Republican. She runs her own PR firm. So the stage is set. And Harry Brooks, let me lead off with this question. And Harry Tindell, we'd love your answer as well. I was talking to a Capitol insider this week who said 90% of the bills that lawmakers consider in Nashville are written by someone else, an outside interest group, lobbyist, you name it. True or not true, Harry Brooks, and what do you say about it?
When I was there, I don't know if it was that high. I don't think 90%. A significant number is written or proposed by an organization or a lobbyist for an organization. From that standpoint, I tended to work with the lawyers with the legislature, like in the education area. Ellen James was the go-to person, and spent a lot of time with her. I ran rarely a bill that from a organization. I would have some over the years from TEA or the school board or from the Principals Association or PTA, but I don't know today. I don't know what the status is today, but then I think that number was a little high.
Harry Tindell, how about you?
Yeah, the bills come from many sources, and I think that the sources are as diverse as our state is. What happens really is there are some people that have an ongoing interest in the legislative process, associations, business groups, local governments, utility districts, on and on and on. And they will need to just update the law to keep it current. And local governments in many counties, not Knox County, but have to bring their own bills as local legislation, and those must go through the same process and are part of that count. But it's a very diverse group. There's a lot of screening that goes on, and some bills are just what-if bills. They're there just in case they're needed, and I think that all of that speaks to why only a small percentage of them pass.
And Harry Tindell, just to follow up on that, another Politico that we've been talking to in the lead up to this conversation said part of the reason we see so much done by outside groups or lobbyists is because staffs are so small for lawmakers in the Tennessee Capitol as compared to other capitals around the country. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, we do have small staffs. We have a very lean and mean government in Tennessee, but in general, I was there for 22 years, and any idea I had, I was able to generate and turn into legislation easily. So, it certainly helps the legal service staff that drafts the legislation into proper form to fit the Tennessee code. They get overwhelmed every session. They bring in temporary help to get through that crunch, but it's just very difficult to draft 3,000 bills in a meaningful and thoughtful way. So, more staff would be helpful, but we have limits on the number of bills that can be filed. In the House, it's only 15 bills per member, and then there's some exceptions, and so you have an artificial, ceiling each year on the number of bills that are going to be filed, and that's why we get to about 3,000. That maxes out the capacity, when you add in the leadership and the governor's bills.
Gentlemen, one of the groups that contributes, if you will, or offers up legislation you are familiar with, I'm sure. It's the American Legislative Exchange Council, it's also known as ALEC. That's not nonpartisan. It's very much partisan. It's more on the conservative end. And I'm curious, while you were in office and as you sit there today and observe how busy they are, how active they are, because from my perspective, they look like one of the main sources for kind of some of the conservative legislation we see floating around, at least in the Southeast. Harry Brooks.
John, they are very impactful from the standpoint of an annual meeting. The bulk of that meeting is spent in regard to producing model legislation. And while it is in general, you have to take that and then apply it to your particular state. They do concentrate a lot of energies on developing model legislation in many different areas.
It's sort of called, in a pejorative way, copy and paste bills. Harry Tindell, to follow on what John is saying, is that a negative thing, do you think, in the process, or does it contribute to the health of states across the country?
I would argue the more ideas, the better. There are conservative groups. There are also more mainstream and even liberal groups. The ideas are passed increasingly more readily around from state to state. Whether it's on charter schools, election law, or even the COVID crisis. There were a lot of legislation brought up in certain states over that. So it's easily shared. Between email and copy and paste, as you say. We're all going to know about any good idea. And some bad ones.
We're going to take a quick break on Inside Tennessee, bring in Don and Susan with their questions right after this short timeout on Inside Tennessee.